The story opens in an idyllic setting, showing a tight-knit community filled with hardworking people. Rosewood is peaceful, with Black-owned businesses and residents living in harmony with one another. However, not far from Rosewood is the predominantly white town of Sumner, a place where racial tensions simmer just beneath the surface. As the camera pans across Rosewood, we meet the key players in this story. Mon, played by Ving Rhames, is a World War I veteran, tough and independent. He's a mysterious outsider who has recently arrived in Rosewood, looking for land to buy and a place to settle down. His presence in the town is marked by both curiosity and admiration from the residents. Sarah Carrier, played by Esther Rolle, is one of the town's matriarchs, a hard-working laundress for white families in Sumner. Her son Sylvester, played by Don Cheadle, is a proud man and protective of his family. The Carrier family represents the heart of Rosewood, embodying its strength and resilience. The story shifts its focus to Fanny Taylor, a white woman from Sumner, whose lie becomes the catalyst for the tragedy that befalls Rosewood. One day, Fanny returns to her home, disheveled and bruised. Fanny, aware of the racial prejudices of the time, falsely accuses a black man of assaulting her, knowing that such a claim will spark outrage. This lie is born out of fear and a desire to cover up an affair she had with a white man who had attacked her earlier that day. As rumors begin to spread, tensions escalate. Back in Rosewood, life continues peacefully, but the audience is made aware of the growing storm as word reaches Sumner. Sheriff Walker, a conflicted man, begins an investigation but is under immense pressure from the local white community to bring swift justice. In Sumner, a mob begins to form, fueled by Fanny's accusation and the racial hatred simmering within the town. The mob is led by James Taylor, Fanny's husband, who is consumed by the belief that his wife was violated by a black man. The narrative shifts between Rosewood and Sumner, showing the widening gap between the two communities. As the white mob grows in size and anger, they march towards Rosewood, determined to find someone to blame. The mob first sets its sights on Aaron Carrier, Sarah Carrier's nephew. They drag him from his home, beating him brutally. But Aaron maintains his innocence. In an effort to de-escalate the situation, Sheriff Walker steps in and saves Aaron from being lynched, but the mob's anger is not easily quelled. With each passing day, the situation in Rosewood grows more precarious. The town's residents sense the impending danger, and some begin to flee. Man, who has built a bond with the Carrier family, realizes that the situation is spiraling out of control. His military experience kicks in, and he begins to prepare for the worst. Sylvester Carrier, equally aware of the threat, arms himself and his family, determined to defend their home at all costs. The mob, now fully engulfed in rage, descends upon Rosewood. They begin to burn homes, destroy businesses, and shoot anyone who stands in their way. The white mob is relentless, and the terror they inflict is palpable. Sarah Carrier's home becomes a fortress of resistance. Sylvester, armed and unyielding, fights back bravely, killing several of the attackers who try to enter his home. But the onslaught is too great. As the violence escalates, Sarah is killed in the chaos, and the Carrier family is torn apart. Man emerges as a hero in the midst of the carnage. Using his military training, he helps many of the Rosewood residents escape, leading them through the swamps to safety. He is aided by John Wright, a white store owner in Rosewood, who becomes a reluctant ally to the black residents. Wright, played by John Voight, is initially hesitant to get involved, but as he witnesses the horrors unfolding, he can no longer stand idly by. He hides several black families in his home and helps them escape through the back roads of Rosewood. The violence in Rosewood continues for days, with the mob growing more vicious with each attack. Homes are burned to the ground, and many of the town's residents are killed or forced to flee into the swamps, where they face the elements in addition to the threat of being hunted down by the mob. Man, determined to save as many people as possible, takes it upon himself to organize a mass exodus. He commandeers a train, with the help of Wright, and loads women and children onto it, sending them away from the horrors of Rosewood. Despite Man's heroic efforts, the town of Rosewood is destroyed. The once thriving community is reduced to ashes, and its residents are left scattered and traumatized. In the aftermath, the survivors of Rosewood are forced to confront the grim reality of what has been lost. Many of them, too afraid to return, move on to other towns, hoping to rebuild their lives. The white residents of Sumner and the surrounding areas, however, continue to live in denial, never acknowledging the full extent of the horrors they inflicted upon Rosewood. The aftermath of the Rosewood massacre is heavy with silence. The town that once thrived with the energy of its residents is now nothing more than smoldering ruins. The peaceful, prosperous Black community that called Rosewood home is gone, its people scattered and broken. The sky over Rosewood darkens, as if to mourn the lives lost and the dreams shattered by the hate-fueled violence. Mon, having done all he could to save as many as possible, stands at the edge of the swamp looking out at the remnants of the town. His face, hardened by war, now reflects the sorrow of witnessing yet another battle, one that feels far too personal. The memory of those he couldn't save weighs heavily on him, but he knows he must keep moving. He can't linger here. With one last glance at what's left of Rosewood, Man turns and walks into the swamp, his silhouette fading into the dense foliage as he disappears from view. A lone survivor carrying the story of Rosewood with him. The survivors, scattered across nearby towns and hidden away, are left to pick up the pieces of their lives. Many are too afraid to speak of what happened. The deep-rooted fear of retribution keeps them silent. Those who do talk find that few are willing to listen. The massacre is largely swept under the rug, a tragedy that the white authorities and residents of Sumner prefer to forget. The pain, however, cannot be erased from the hearts of those who lost everything. John Wright, the white shopkeeper who helped the survivors, is also left to grapple with his role. He knows he did what he could, but it wasn't enough. He saw the hatred firsthand, the bloodlust in the eyes of the mob, and the destruction they left in their wake. He is haunted by the memories of the innocent lives lost, of the children and families who never made it out. Though he was a man of action during the massacre, helping as many as he could escape, the guilt of not doing more lingers with him. Time passes, and the memory of Rosewood slowly fades from public consciousness. The survivors are scattered, living in different parts of the state, some never speaking of the massacre again. Others pass down the story to their children and grandchildren, ensuring that the legacy of Rosewood is not completely forgotten. These oral histories are the only remnants of what Rosewood once was, a vibrant, thriving town where families built a life for themselves, only to have it ripped away by senseless hatred. Man, whose journey took him far from Rosewood, remains a symbol of resilience. His fate is left uncertain, but his role in the story of Rosewood is indelible. He was a man who fought not only for his survival, but for the survival of his people, a hero whose bravery helped save countless lives. Years pass, and the land where Rosewood once stood becomes overgrown, nature reclaiming what was lost. The town is gone, wiped from the map, but the people who lived through the massacre carry their memories with them. They live in different cities, in new communities, some trying to rebuild their lives, others struggling under the weight of trauma and loss. Rosewood survivors are a living testament to both the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring scars of racial violence. John Wright, the storekeeper, remains in Sumner, haunted by his role in the events. His store becomes quieter as time moves on, and he withdraws from the community. His actions saved lives, but he knows that more could have been done to stop the bloodshed. The guilt he carries weighs heavily on him, and though he continues to live among the people of Sumner, he can never forget what he witnessed, nor can he ever fully forgive himself for not doing more. Meanwhile, across the state and in distant cities, the survivors of Rosewood try to rebuild. Some manage to find new homes, new lives, but others are never able to move past the horrors they experienced. The trauma of what happened in Rosewood lingers, a silent wound that is rarely spoken of in public. For many, Rosewood becomes a painful memory, a ghost of a town that was destroyed not just by fire, but by hate. But as time passes, the story of Rosewood begins to resurface. The descendants of the survivors hear the stories from their elders, stories of a proud, self-sufficient Black community that was destroyed in a matter of days. These descendants, refusing to let Rosewood be forgotten, begin to speak out. They tell the world what happened, ensuring that the massacre will not be erased from history. Slowly, the truth about Rosewood begins to emerge. Though it was long covered up, a movement to acknowledge the massacre takes root. People demand that history recognize the atrocity and honor the victims. The survivors, though few in number, find their voices again, sharing their stories with a new generation. The world begins to listen. Eventually, efforts to seek justice and reparations for the survivors and their descendants gain momentum. The state of Florida, after decades of silence, is forced to confront the brutal truth of what happened in Rosewood. The survivors, who had once been silenced by fear and shame, are now seen as heroes, their resilience in the face of unimaginable violence, and inspiration to many. Rosewood is remembered not just as a tragedy, but as a story of survival and strength. In the final moments of the film, the camera returns to the land where Rosewood once stood. The trees and grass have grown tall, covering the scars left by the fire and destruction. But beneath the surface, the land still remembers. The spirits of those who were lost in the massacre seem to linger in the air, a reminder of the pain that can never truly be erased. As the sun sets over the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, the story of Rosewood continues to live on. Though the town itself is gone, its legacy remains. The survivors, their descendants, and all those who have heard their story carry it forward, ensuring that Rosewood will never be forgotten.